All right, well, yeah, I'm really excited to talk about marriages and to talk about marriage counseling and premarital counseling with y'all. And as I kind of was looking at how am I going to, approach this, I was kind of unsure because it's much more common for me to teach a message in a chapel service, right? So I looked at this and I told my wife, I said, I have no idea what to do. And she's like, oh yeah, you got it. Just do this, this, and this. Because she's been with me in all those situations. And so here's what I'm going to do today, talking about marriage and marriage counseling and premarital counseling. I'm going to make it very, very practical. Okay, I'm going to share with you all the things that I use when I officiate a wedding, when I go through premarital counseling with someone or marriage counseling, and I'm going to share with you those things. Now, I'm not telling you that they're all the right things. I'm telling you that's the way I do it. And so hopefully there will be some good resources in there for y'all. If you don't want them, you don't have to use them, okay? So we'll kind of start with that. So write down questions, write down thoughts. Hopefully I can answer some of those for you at the end. But when I was listening to Colin earlier, he was talking about humility, and I talked a little bit about that last night. And I think that's been a big theme of what we've actually talked about, a lot of what we've talked about so far last night and today. And I've never, and I'll start with this, I've never offered to officiate somebody's wedding. Never. I've never offered. I think in the last 10 years, I've probably done 40 maybe for people in our community. About 3 to 5 a year is about what it comes out to for me. And those are all birthed out of relationships. So as a chaplain, people know that, you are able to officiate weddings. But as we talk about humility, and this is why I bring up humility, because really as chaplains, the main thing that we want for them is for their wedding day to be special. If it's me officiating it, great. If it's their pastor, great. If it's their friend, great. Just to really have that posture of our heart. Listening to Colin talk earlier about going to Cody Zeller's wedding, I got the impression that he was not officiating the wedding. He might be, I don't know. But going as a chaplain and not officiating really takes that relationship to another level. So I thought that was really cool that he shared that. But I really do believe that these things are birthed out of relationships. And so when you're there serving, you don't have to offer, you don't have to ask, you don't have to finagle your way in there, right? Just be humble, be there, serve, care for people. And when you do, they're going to know that, you're there for them in that particular way. So we'll start with counseling. We'll start with that. We'll talk about premarital counseling, okay? Premarital counseling, I would say this, okay? If somebody asks you to officiate their wedding, always make sure this happens. Always make sure this happens, that they have some type of premarital counseling. Now, one of the things that I do, a resource that I have a pre-written email on my computer. It's already pre-written, okay? So when somebody says, hey, would you officiate our wedding? Yep, I sure will. Just give me your email address and your spouse's, your fiance's email address. Copy, paste, boom. Like, doesn't take that long, right? Just change the name. And I do that to say, hey, here's, something you need to think about is premarital counseling. So it doesn't have to be me, like it doesn't have to be you, but it's important that you know and understand how valuable premarital counseling is for somebody who's getting married. If they have a pastor or somebody else that they want to do it. But the reason that I have that pre-written email is so that I can share these things with them before we even begin this journey. It's a great kind of tool that's helped me to have that already typed up, to have it written so that I can send that to them, the day that they talk to me about their wedding. Now, I will also add the reason that this is important, and I'm just going to share from a personal experience recently, something that's actually heavy on my heart right now. For 11 years, I've, been officiating weddings as a chaplain, and my hope, and maybe this is just prideful or a little bit selfish, but I wanted to go through my career as a chaplain being 100% with no divorces. And maybe that was just me, right? But a couple came to me years ago, and it was not a big timeline, and said, hey, we're getting married in about 6 weeks. Would you officiate our wedding? And we talked and we met, and they're actually going through their separation right now. And, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. They didn't take all the advice that I offered them, but also we weren't able to go as deep as what I would typically go with somebody. And so I just want to encourage you to know and understand how valuable and important premarital counseling is. So what I typically require, and it's not a requirement, but what I typically recommend is 4 2-hour sessions, okay? 4 2-hour sessions, because you can't really get that far in 1 hour. I mean, sometimes in an hour, you're just starting to break the ice on some of these things. So I recommend in that email 4 2-hour sessions, right? There's a resource that I use called Prepare and Enrich. Prepare and Enrich. It's a website where you can send a link to a couple. They can take an assessment online. Make sure and they'll teach you this, that you use that language, assessment, that it's not a test, it's not pass or fail. It's just kind of a stamp in time that will show a couple how they're doing. It will help you as a counselor, counseling them and helping them. So you can go to Prepare and Enrich if you're looking for a tool to use to help people in marriage counseling and premarital counseling. It's a great resource. I know there's others like Symbis and different things, but this one has been very good for me. And so just go there. They can get you certified so you can use this. And what I want to do is I want to show you a PDF file, Thor, of what one looks like. Thor, can you pull up that PDF? This is one, so I had to be selective of which one I would use. So I used one from me and my wife. And for the most part, it's good. Okay, so this is the intro page. There's a couples report and a facilitators report. Now, the couples report is not as detailed, so that's the one we're going to look at. The facilitators report, you can see how the people answered the specific questions, and through the algorithm, you get the results that you're able to talk with them about. So we'll just kind of flip through this. I'll show it to you real quick. Right here on the left side is just the contents, and then you have these different strength and growth areas. Now, all ours were pretty high. I'm pretty proud of that. We work hard on our marriage, but you can see well, you probably can't see actually, but I'll read them to you. Communication, conflict resolution, partner style and habits, financial management, sexual relationship, family and friends, roles and responsibilities, and spiritual beliefs. And so it kind of just gives you some feedback on where they're at in that. The next one is, can you go, yeah, here we go. Relationship dynamics, okay? So this kind of tells them how they are as a couple. So you've got assertiveness. Assertiveness is, are you able to ask for what you want? So if you're upset about something, if you want something, how good are you at asking about that? We're pretty good on that. Self-confidence, your confidence in yourself. Avoidance, right? Ours is pretty low. So if I were going to say, hey, does anybody see a red flag here? You would say, yep, that one, right? It would be avoidance. It says is the tendency to minimize issues and reluctance to deal with issues directly. Now, I don't avoid hard conversations. I don't mind hard conversations. I just avoid drama. I don't like drama. I don't like it. I don't like that. I'm not even kidding. It feels like one night a week I tell my wife, I'm done parenting for the night. I'm done. Like, I'm not mad, but I'll pick back up tomorrow. Unless it's an emergency, I just need to be done tonight. So if you were leading someone through counseling, and I'm not going to answer that. You would look at this and you would simply be able to ask a question. Hey, do you guys typically avoid problems? and then they have the opportunity to talk. Like, you don't have to be an expert to be able to do that. Stress profile, it is what it is. Everybody's stressed out. Gives you an opportunity to talk about some things. The next one. That's all right. I thought you were doing the next. Couple map, family maps. Not going to spend a lot of time on these. They just give you some feedback on where you're at as a couple. This would show, like my wife, for example, her dad left her and her sister when they were fairly young, right? Don't ever talk. Don't text, don't do anything. So you would see that she's very disconnected on the family map. So it'd give you the opportunity to just say, hey, what's the relationship with your family? That's it. And it helps you with that. I think that's it. Is that all? Oh, no, that's not it. There's one more here. If you go back, can you go back one? The scope personality scales. This is typically how you're hardwired. Okay, this is more like how God created you. These are normally not able to be changed. So there again, for me and my wife, you see my organization is at the top. Hers is pretty low. She's very free-spirited. Okay, this is good. God's taught me a lot about how I need to change a little bit in this area. But when we first came together, like this was tough for us. You know, this is tough for us. I don't understand things like the TV remote, why it's not sitting where it's supposed to be sitting. I don't understand. I don't understand. If you just put it back, it'll always be there. But not everybody in my family thinks that way, okay? That's never going to change. I'm always going to be like that. She's always going to be like that. Both are good. God created us that way, but it gives you the opportunity to talk to a couple about that and help them thrive in that way and how God created them. So that is the prepare and enrich. Now, it's the same thing when it comes to marriage counseling, but it's just hard when it comes to marriage counseling and they're already married. Like a lot of times the results are real low. People are mad. There's two things I would say about marriage counseling is one, when I meet with couples that are already married, I say, look, the best way to approach this, I know you're upset, but don't point the finger at each other. If we're ever going to get anywhere, it can't be just this. He did this, she did this. It's got to be a little bit self-reflective, right? What's my responsibility in this? That's how I tend to find some headway with married couples. The other thing I would say about marriage counseling is this, is know when to refer. Know when to get some help, right? I mean, maybe some of you are. I'm not a licensed professional marriage counselor. You know, people want to talk to me because of relationships, but I also understand that I'm not a professional licensed counselor. And two, you can only do so much. So have resources. Know people in your town that do that type of thing. Bruce is doing that at his church, helping his pastor. That's why he's doing that, so his pastor can have some help. And so know people in your area that do that type of thing, so that when they say, hey, where can we go? Here's 3 options. Takes a little time. You have to do a little homework, but it's very valuable. So that was the first one. Counseling. Remind me, Tony, what time I need to be done? I already forgot. 3. Oh, okay, good. We're good. Okay. The second one, we're going to talk about the actual wedding ceremony. The actual wedding ceremony. We'll talk about the rehearsal, and we'll talk about the day of the wedding. So here's a couple things about a wedding rehearsal. So who does a lot of weddings? Or most of y'all do? I know Donnie does a lot. Ray, you do a lot? I'm going to walk through this like in the most simplistic way, just so that you can, kind of think about some of these things. A couple things about a wedding rehearsal. So when you're in this situation, at the rehearsal, everybody will be late, okay? Amen. Everybody will be late. You can count on it. You don't get to be late, right? So always be on time for the wedding rehearsal. What I typically wear for a wedding rehearsal would probably be something like this, maybe a tie underneath it, a sport coat, something like that. At rehearsals, sometimes you'll have people show up and they'll be in, they'll be pretty spiffy. Sometimes they'll show up in, beach clothes for a rehearsal. It's both ends of the spectrum. You definitely don't want to be the person that's underdressed for the rehearsal. Another thing about a rehearsal, sometimes they have a director, sometimes it's their cousin, right, who's there trying to direct everything. So if they have a director and somebody who's coordinating all this stuff, that's good news for you. Let them do that, right? Let them do that. That's what they're there for. If they don't have a director, have a game plan in your mind how you would help them facilitate how those things are going to go. Okay, so typically how I do that is I start up front with everybody in place, okay? And I start with the pronouncement of Mr. and Mrs., okay? So we start with that at the rehearsal. They walk out, and then they walk back in, okay? That's typically what I will have them do. So we'll start up front in place so they all know where they're standing. I'll pronounce them husband and wife, introduce them, and then they'll walk out, and then everybody comes back in. Make sense? So hopefully at the wedding that you officiate, hopefully there's a wedding director. They can coordinate all that. But if not, then it'll be on you. And it's funny that, or ironic that a lot of times people don't know a lot of the most basic things, right? And it's important to, when you have some free time, to sit down and just refresh those things. Which side is the bride supposed to be on, right? I mean, sometimes people just don't know those types of things. And so just, it's good to refresh and make sure all that's, up to date in your mind. So that's the rehearsal. The last part is the ceremony that we'll talk about. For me, I typically arrive at least 1 hour early. At least 1 hour early for this ceremony. And when I do, well, first I don't want to have a flat tire on the way or something go wrong, don't get there in time. But when I get there, I typically, if I can, I go see both bridal or both wedding parties and go check in with them. The men are normally easier to see, to get to, but I always go just check on them. And a lot of times I'll go and just pray with them, just go and give them a quick hug, pray with them and kind of set the tone for the day. But the next thing I want to do as we talk about the ceremony is I want to show y'all the exact template that I use for a wedding ceremony. I want to show you the actual one. I'll walk you through it, what I talk about and what I do at a ceremony. Like I said at the beginning, this is not the right way. This is the way that I feel like has worked well for me. If you guys want a copy of this, I'm happy to give you a copy of this. I can email it to you. You can change the names, you can add, you can take away, but it'll give you something to use if you want to use that template for a wedding. So if we've got that, Thor, if you can pull that up, I'll kind of walk y'all through that. So it's not easy to read, but that was in a PDF file. So what I'll do is I'll read that and I'll show it to you. So at the top there, it says the prelude, guest arriving, the processional, parents seating and wedding party. And then I just have notes in there for everyone to stand. Now this is a ceremony from a wedding that I did in October for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And his now wife Madison. So their names are actually inserted in here. Now the opening prayer, okay, is right there. There you go. After everyone stands for Madison and her dad. So when they get down front, now again, I'm just walking you through this piece by piece, so it's real practical for you. When they get down there, I read that opening prayer. So I read it word for word. And I'm not going to read it all today, but it's, dearly beloved, we've come together in the presence of God to witness and bless the joining together of this man and this woman into marriage. So I'm reading that. While they're standing down front, while she's standing with her dad and he's standing over here. Now, I'll add something to this. This is what I use. I have this black big I don't know what it is, but inside of it, I'm reading this off of an iPad, okay, that is on Do Not Disturb, and it's set for the screen to not go blank. Under that, I have this on a hard copy piece of paper. I would recommend not just standing there with an iPad. People do it. I mean, it's fine, but I just don't think it looks the best. That's just my personal opinion. So I'll read through that, and then I will ask, who gives this woman to be married to this man? He will give her away, and that's when I'll have everybody be seated. Now, right here, I will do a very short message. This message is about 5 to 8 minutes long. It's not very long. And one of the things that I always talk about with couples when I talk about marriage from the very first time that we meet in person is an idea of unconditional love. That's what I always talk about to a couple first thing, that they understand the difference in a contract and a covenant, that they are not entering into a contract, they are entering into an unconditional covenant with one another. And so that's always where I begin. And the reason that I begin there is because we live in a time, in a culture, in a society where people aren't doing that. You know, it's almost, I'm not happy, I'm out. And I want people to know that if I'm officiating your wedding, that is not what you're signing up for. When you say for better or worse, that's what it means. It means for the really good days and the really bad days. And for our community, a lot of times that means when racing is long gone. You might have been a hero then, but once racing's gone, it changes. And I want them to understand that. And so that's the context of what I'm talking about when I share this message. And so I start with, and I don't always do this, it's not the exact same, okay? It's not the same for every person. I try to, fit this to them. But I'll start with 1 John chapter 4. God showed how much he loved us by sending his one and only Son into the world so that we might have eternal life through him. This is real love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as a sacrifice to take away our sins. That's unconditional love. God loved me when I turned my back on him. That's the truth. That's what a healthy marriage looks like. I mean, that's what a good marriage is. And so I'm talking to them about, it's not I'll go 50 if, it's not I'll go 100 if. There are no ifs. Like in marriage, you're just saying, hey, I'm going to go 100% no matter what you do. I'm all in 100%. That's what an unconditional commitment looks like. Some other verses I'll read, Ephesians chapter 4, always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults. I like to note that faults has an S on it. It's plural. Everybody has more than one. Everybody that's gotten married, that's getting married, everybody in here, we all have more than one. And so what does God call us to do? To make allowance for each other's faults. The next page there. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now I know this is read a lot at weddings. This was not written for a wedding, okay? It was not written for a wedding ceremony. It was written to a church, but it's still very applicable if you want to use it because you see that love is patient and kind. It does apply to marriages, and you read things like, well, it keeps no record of wrongs. And I'm a very practical thinker, well, everybody's kept a record of wrongs. So what does this mean? Well, the unconditional part of it is choosing. Right? Is choosing to be patient, is choosing to be kind. And then you can read 1 Corinthians verse 13 from that same chapter if you want to. Ephesians chapter 5, that's a verse that I use a lot of times. Be willing to serve each other out of respect for Christ. And so again, in this 5 to 8 minute message is an opportunity for me to tell them, hey, make sure you understand that marriage is not about getting, it's about giving. It's not about taking, it's about serving. It's about caring and serving each other out of respect for Christ. And then after that, I'll get to the next part, the declaration of consent, Ricky, will you have this woman to be your wife? I will. Madison, will you have this man to be your husband? They simply answer, I will. And then I get to the vows. And so the vows are more traditional that I use. I've tweaked these a little bit. But you can see the kind of the break there with the hash mark. That's what I read, and then they'll repeat after me. I encourage them at the rehearsal and remind them, hey, don't look at me when you're doing this. Look at each other. And then they'll just repeat after me. Ricky, take you, Madison, be my wife, having to hold, better or worse, richer or poor in sickness and health, and love and cherish from this day forward till death do us part. It doesn't have to be that. It can be whatever. The only thing that makes it official, right, is you signing it and having the witnesses. So it doesn't have to be that. You can tweak that if you want. I also think that written vows to each other are very special. I can tell you that they are one of the most special moments in a wedding ceremony when they're sharing something that they created or came up with themselves. And so I would always, when you meet with them, give them the opportunity to say, hey, I would really think about doing this if I were you. Think about, sharing your own vows to each other. Next page. The rings. Again, I just talk about the rings for a second. It's a symbol. It's a reminder. I talk about the importance of it serving as a reminder of covenant vows. And then this next section there that says we will. This is something that I always typically do, is I just ask the congregation, if you will, I just say, hey, you all are here because you love them, they love you, you're part of their family. If you would support them and encourage them all the days of their lives, would you answer, we will? And they all say, we will. And it's just a pretty cool and pretty fun way to engage everybody. And then I will pray. And so at the beginning, it was just an opening prayer that I read word for word. At this part, I will actually bow my head and pray over them, and I'll just pray in that moment as the Lord leads. After that, the pronouncement. Pronounce them husband and wife there, and they can have their first kiss. One of the other things I like to make sure, if there's a DJ or somebody playing music, that they will hold off on the music until I am able to present them. Then as far as the presentation goes, you get to present them as Mr. and Mrs. As you all know, make sure that it's Mrs. and not Miss, because that's important to the Mrs. I think that's about it, though, as far as that goes. The only other thing I would add is if you're doing a wedding out of state, make sure that your ordination and everything is in line for that particular state. South Carolina, which is a great state, you don't have to do anything. I think you can just be like, hey, I think I'm ordained, and you're good to go. But in Virginia, you got to actually take them something from your ordination, and they have to approve it. It's a little bit longer process, if you will. The last thing I'll add that I think is something that the Lord gave me that has been a blessing as far as relationships go. As a chaplain, you're just thinking about people and how you can care for them. One thing that I do personally is whenever I marry somebody, I always set a reminder in my phone for almost 1 year. 1 week short of 1 year, I set the anniversary date, and I have an alarm go off 1 week before, and I write them a handwritten note that I hope gets there, 2 days before their anniversary, so that they see that, and I'm able to wish them a happy anniversary before it's their anniversary. And I think it's things like that help you as a chaplain, that carry those relationships deeper, that let people know that you care about them, that you're thinking about them. And I always tell people whenever I'm about to finish the wedding ceremony, I always tell them and remind them, hey, I'm not just officiating your service, but there's a deeper connection when you've officiated a wedding. There's something deeper, that you're not just a chaplain, but you're there to pray for them and to encourage them all the days of their lives, the good days and the bad days. So those are some things that I apply to marriage counseling and weddings. I know I don't have, I've got more time, but I wanted to leave a few minutes for questions and let y'all ask anything about some of that. Or if anybody's got something they want to add, I'm sure there's a lot to add. So, yeah.
The email you were talking about in that presentation, could you maybe send that to Cheryl and just have her?
Yeah, I'll send it to Cheryl and let her.
I'd like to see that email.
Yeah. Oh, the one about, like, that I first send to them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's cool that you put something in your phone to remind you to check on them or send something to them, right at their first anniversary. The guy that married us, we haven't heard from that guy ever. It was Raymond.
Raymond.
Thanks for hanging me out to dry. Hey, Nick, will you tell them, is somebody else raising their hand?
Mark?
Will you tell them what your parameters are for who you will marry and who you will not marry?
That's a case-by-case basis, I guess. Well, I mean, I guess we're, it is case-by-case. It really is because, there are people with different philosophies. There are different lines in the sand, if you will. And fortunately for me, I haven't been backed into a corner where there's been something that's uncomfortable, or something that's not biblical. Let's put it that way. So for me, if it's something that's not biblical, I'm not doing it. That's it for me. I mean, that's me. I'm not marrying two guys or two girls. Not doing it. I don't care what it costs me. Not going to do it. So that's kind of that line in the sand for me. Now, in racing, and where it kind of differs from the church is some churches are pretty stern on, hey, if you're living together, we're not helping you. Now, I don't personally take that philosophy because I think it'd be worse if they didn't want to get married. I think it'd be worse if they didn't want to get married and continue living together. Now, I've got one couple that I'm doing premarital counseling with right now, and they're living together, but, we're kind of working through some things, and they're very adamant, like, hey, we're not having sex. I'm like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But I'm going to show you what God says. You pray about it. I'm going to help you, okay? Like, like they're grown adults. If they're not living together, they can still do whatever they want, right? And so that's kind of the approach that I take. And to be honest with you, and I'll just speak, just a wedding that I did this year actually was from a kind of a fallout from their church. Their pastor was just pretty hard on them about, the way that they were. And I didn't think it was fair. I didn't think it was accurate. And so I think it's a case-by-case kind of situation where you get to talk to the people and hear a little bit about what's going on in their lives. But it's an incredible opportunity to disciple and to help people grow in their faith. The one couple that we're meeting with, I'm actually starting a one-on-one discipleship with him next week because he looks at, these assessments and these results, and we talk about things. And, I'm like, man, if you're going to love your wife unconditionally, you've got to continue to grow. You've got to grow vertical before you can grow horizontal. That's a fact for everybody. Your relationship with God has to be thriving and growing strong before you can be a good husband. And he looked at me, and he's a Christian, and he said, yeah, I get it. I don't know how. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm racing, and I just don't know how to do that. And I said, man, well, what a great opportunity we have then. I'll help you grow. As you grow in your faith and your walk with the Lord, you're going to learn how to become a better husband. And so then we're going to begin a discipleship program. Mark?
One of the things that you mentioned at the very beginning is something I've wrestled through because I went through kind of a weird situation. I agree with you 100% as far as not trying to, hey, you're getting married, hey, can I marry you, type of thing. I have learned to just kind of ask a little bit because sometimes they have no clue what to do. So this kind of happened in a
For sure.
There's some that I'm a month out from doing the wedding. I'll say, hey, what's going on? Who's going to be there? Who's walking down with who? I have no idea. People walk, how do you come in? You're like, okay. So then you find out if they have someone. If they have someone, I'll call them. I'll get their number and say, hey, what's going on with the wedding? And if they're super disciplined and know what they're doing, then it is all theirs. More power to them.
Yeah.
A little bit of extra questions about that rehearsal, because if the rehearsal goes great, so does the wedding. If the rehearsal doesn't go well, it makes it difficult on the wedding day.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, to your first point, yeah, I think it's important to be as available as you can. And, I will say sometimes, hey, if when I know a couple is engaged or whatever, say, hey, if you need help with anything, I can point you in the right direction or can help you or whatever. I guess what I'm getting at is sometimes people out here, they get engaged and everybody knows it. And then it's like, sometimes it feels like people are clawing at them to, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. And, again, for me, it's just like, hey, I'm not here for, I guess for me, I have to keep it about the main thing. And the main thing's not me, and that's the balance that we face out here. And it's, just, it comes back to having a posture of your heart to really genuinely want for them what they want. But I do think, yes, and that's the balance of chaplaincy, right? I mean, in a lot of regards, is being able to offer and be available, but not press too hard, because you're right, they may not know what to do.
It's not that I wanted, if I didn't do any wedding, I mean, I love doing weddings, but it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of work. So if they choose someone else that does a great job, thank you.
Yeah.
But it's also, to me, it's part of shepherding and helping them go down the right road.
Yeah, I agree.
At the same time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. But I don't make like racing jokes or anything. Yeah, yeah.
My dad passed away in '09, and my wife, my mama, she met an old boyfriend she had before her and my dad ever met.
Yeah.
They were getting married, and they asked me to do the service. So I snuck. I promised to obey in his vows. Everybody caught it but him. He was nervous. He didn't get it.
So after I read that opening prayer, and then the dad goes, and everybody sits down at the same time. For me, that's kind of when I change the atmosphere a little bit, because it goes from very kind of formal feeling to like the next thing I say is, y'all look great. How you feeling? Like I just kind of bring it back down a little bit, because all this momentum has built to this one moment in time. And then I just kind of bring it back to reality and go, hey, we're here. This is it. You've been working for the last 6 months. You've been hustling all day. Now we're here. So now what do? Well, you enjoy it. Enjoy it. You're going to take a lot of pictures. You're going to get a lot of hugs. You're going to have a lot of celebrations. Enjoy every moment of it. So that's not really humor, but, I'm not super serious the whole time,
One driver, him and his girlfriend got married, and I've known him for probably 2 years longer than I knew her. And she was getting ready to. Got up there, and I said, I've known both of these. I said, I've known him longer. I said, he's real quiet. And I turned around and looked at her. To her, not so much. And I turned and looked at him. I said, I've seen him have wrecks and stuff. He never get excited. I turned around and looked at her. Not so much. And I said, I've seen him have wrecks, tear his car all up, and I've never seen him mad and want to fight. But I turned and looked at her, and everybody said, everybody laughed. She was fighting a heartbeat.
Yeah, and when somebody asks you to do their wedding, they ask you because they respect you, they appreciate what you do, and you don't have to be anybody else other than you. That's why they asked you.
It's good. Never married anybody, but I gave my daughter away this last year, and just a little, so them. They're making a covenant between them and God, and they only wanted people there that were going to pray for and be, part of that. It wasn't a social event. So that's kind of the context of what was there. But there was more Bible verses read. They stopped and sang worship in the middle of the service. They had their favorite worship song. So it was just very Christ-centered. So I would encourage, if you have people who are believers like that, make that as much Christ-centered of a ceremony. That's what it is, right? The number of people that came up to us afterwards and just talked about how amazing it was to see that and be the experience of a part of that. So just hope that's an encouragement to you guys, because it was a blessing to me, and it was really great to have that experience.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, one thing I will remind people of is it can be whatever you want. If you want to stop in the middle of the service and you want to have a moment of worship, that's what we can do. And a lot of times people don't, they look to you, and when you ask them that and go, hey, do you want to do any special, something different in the service? You want to add anything to it? And they go, I don't know. Do you? I'm like, it's not my wedding. You tell me. But they don't think about those things a lot. Hey, do you want to take communion? Like sometimes people take communion, at their wedding ceremony, which is really special. A lot of times, though, they don't think about these things until you help them, kind of process through. That whole ceremony, from the time the bride gets down in front of me, is, 15 minutes, maybe, the whole thing, from the time she gets down front. I think that's probably a good timeline. Long weddings are not ideal, and you definitely don't want to be the one taking up all the time. Anybody else? Y'all, please let me know anytime you have questions about this. Reach out. I'll give you any resources I can, and I'll get that info to Cheryl so she can pass it along to you. Thank y'all.